Most people think the New York subway never really sleeps. In a city like New York City, that sounds believable. Even at 2 in the morning, there's always someone waiting on a platform. A tired nurse leaning against a tiled wall. A college kid with headphones on, staring at nothing. A man in a wrinkled suit who clearly missed the last reasonable train home. The trains come, the trains go. The tunnels breathe in hot air and breathe out something colder. Steel grinding against steel, wind rushing ahead of headlights. It's a rhythm people get used to. But what most people don't know is that there are trains that run when no one is supposed to be there. This story didn't start with a passenger. It started with a security guard. His name was Daniel Ruiz. He worked a night shift monitoring CCTV cameras for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority inside a quiet control room beneath Manhattan. The room was small, windowless, and always a little too cold. Fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. A row of monitors covered the wall in front of him, each screen showing a different angle. Daniel liked the night shift. Fewer supervisors, fewer phone calls, fewer problems. Most nights were routine. He would sip burnt vending machine coffee, scroll through camera feeds, log minor incidents, a drunk argument, a lost tourist, a raccoon wandering too close to the tracks. At around 3:17 a.m., the system usually felt dead. Not quiet, exactly, just empty. The kind of hour where even the city seems unsure of itself. That was when he noticed something strange. On one of the tunnel cameras near an unused section of track, the lights flickered. That wasn't unusual. Old wiring, moisture in the air. The subway tunnels had been there for decades. Things flickered all the time. What was unusual was the sound. The CCTV feed was muted by default, but Daniel could see the vibration in the frame. Fine dust drifted down from the curved ceiling. Small particles trembled along the edge of the track. The image itself quivered slightly, as if something heavy was moving somewhere just out of sight, like something massive was approaching from deep within the tunnel. Daniel frowned and leaned closer to the monitor. He reached for the control panel and pulled up the scheduling software. There was only one problem. No trains were scheduled at that hour. He checked the system twice. Nothing. No maintenance crews. No reroutes. No emergency transfers. No test runs. The line connected to that tunnel section had shut down at 1 a.m. for overnight inspection. Power should have been minimal. Track sensors should have been inactive. And yet, the camera began to tremble harder. A faint glow appeared at the far end of the tunnel. At first, it looked like a trick of the light. A reflection, a glitch. Then, it grew brighter. 2 headlights slowly formed in the darkness. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He tapped the keyboard, switching to a secondary camera further down the same line. Static. He switched again. Static. Only the first camera remained active. The headlights moved closer. Slowly, quietly. No sparks. No screeching brakes. No familiar rush of wind that usually preceded a train's arrival. Just a steady, unnatural glide. A train entered the frame, but it wasn't one Daniel recognized. The exterior was darker than standard MTA silver. The metal looked dull, almost stained, like it had been submerged in something thick and then left to dry. There were no illuminated route signs, no flashing digital number, no advertisement panels along the side. The windows were lit from within, but the light was dim and yellowed, like old fluorescent bulbs struggling to stay alive. Daniel swallowed and quickly checked the rail sensor panel. No weight detected. That made no sense. The sensors were designed to measure the exact tonnage of anything passing over the tracks. The train continued forward, and it wasn't stopping. He reached for the audio feed and turned it up. At first, there was only low static. Then he heard it. Not the familiar clatter of wheels on track. Not the rhythmic pounding he had grown used to. This sound was wrong. It was slower, heavier, a dragging metallic scrape, as if something beneath the train was grinding against concrete. A deep, aching sound that seemed to stretch through the tunnel walls. The cars passed one by one in front of the camera. Daniel's eyes moved across the windows, and that's when his breathing changed. There were people inside, dozens of them. Every seat appeared occupied, but no one moved, no one shifted, no one blinked, as far as he could tell. They weren't looking at phones. They weren't talking. They weren't even glancing around the car. They were all facing forward, sitting upright, perfectly still. Their faces looked pale under the weak interior lights, too pale, almost gray. Daniel felt a cold sensation crawl up his spine. A train full of passengers. At 3:17 a.m., on a line that was shut down, with no schedule. He grabbed the radio on his desk. Control to track operations. Do you copy? Silence. He tried again. Unscheduled movement detected online for Tunnel Sector B. Please confirm. The only response was a faint crackle. On the screen, the train continued gliding past. One of the passengers near the window shifted slightly. Daniel leaned closer. The man's head turned, slowly, not toward the front of the train, not toward another passenger, toward the camera. The movement was stiff, deliberate. His eyes were dark, too dark. Daniel couldn't see whites, just shadow. Then, as if following a silent instruction, another passenger turned, and another, until every visible face inside that car was angled toward the CCTV lens, all at once, all staring directly outward, directly at him. Daniel's throat went dry. The dragging sound grew louder in his headphones. He realized it wasn't just metal scraping. It sounded almost like breathing, deep, layered, overlapping breaths echoing through the tunnel. The train still did not slow down. It moved past the camera, car after car, each window revealing the same thing. Still bodies, pale faces, unblinking eyes, watching. The last car came into view. There was something different about it. The lights inside flickered more violently, and in the final window, the seat closest to the glass was empty. Daniel felt a strange wave of relief, until he noticed the door beside that seat. It was slightly open, not enough for someone to walk through comfortably, but enough to suggest it hadn't been fully shut. As the final car slid out of frame, the headlights vanished into darkness. The vibration slowly faded. The dragging sound stretched thinner, until it disappeared completely. The tunnel camera steadied. Dust settled. Silence returned. Daniel immediately checked the sensors again. Still nothing. No weight. No recorded movement. No power fluctuation. It was as if the train had never existed. His hands were shaking now. He replayed the last 30 seconds of footage. The system buffered, then froze. The screen flickered, and went black. One by one, the other monitors in the control room began to lose signal. Platform cameras, stairwell cameras, even the hallway outside the control room door. Black, black, black. The fluorescent lights above him dimmed slightly, humming louder than before. Daniel could hear his own breathing in the room. Then, through his headset, a new sound emerged. Not static, not interference. A low mechanical chime, like an arrival announcement. A distorted voice followed, barely understandable. Next stop, the audio glitched. You. The lights snapped back to full brightness. All monitors returned at once. Every tunnel feed was normal, every platform empty. The clock in the corner of his main screen read 3:18 a.m. 1 minute had passed. Daniel checked the recording archive to save the footage. The timestamp for 3:17 a.m. was there, but the video file was corrupted, unplayable, as if something had overwritten it. He leaned back slowly in his chair, trying to steady himself. Maybe it was a system malfunction. Maybe exhaustion was playing tricks on him. He looked up at the wall of monitors again. Everything seemed ordinary, until he noticed one small detail. On a platform camera several stations away, where no trains were scheduled to arrive for hours, a single figure stood near the edge of the tracks, perfectly still, facing the tunnel, as if waiting. The digital arrival board above the platform flickered, blank at first, Then letters slowly formed. No line number, no destination, just 2 words. Arriving soon. Daniel leaned closer to the screen. For a moment, he told himself it was just an older maintenance model. New York had trains from different generations running at different times. Maybe this was one of the older units. But the longer he stared, the less that explanation made sense. The train looked old, much older than current models. The metal exterior wasn't just outdated, it looked wrong. The surface was darkened, uneven, as if exposed to extreme heat. Patches along the sides appeared warped, not dented from impact, but subtly melted. The paint was nearly gone, replaced by a dull, gray-black tone that absorbed the tunnel light instead of reflecting it. There were no digital route signs, no glowing orange letters, no scrolling station names, no number, no destination, just blank windows, sliding through the tunnel like dark picture frames. Daniel felt a small pulse in his throat. He zoomed the camera in slightly. The image pixelated, but held steady enough for him to see details. The front car had no visible operator inside, no silhouette behind the glass. The control cabin appeared empty. That wasn't possible. Even automated tests required supervision. He reached for the audio feed and turned the volume up higher. Static, a thick layer of it, like distant rainfall, then something else. A low metallic scraping sound. It didn't match the rhythm of wheels on track. There was no repeating pattern, no sharp clack of metal joints passing beneath. This sound dragged, slow, heavy, continuous, like something large was being pulled beneath the train. Daniel adjusted the equalizer, trying to isolate the frequency. The scraping deepened in tone, vibrating faintly through his headset. For a second, he had the strange impression that the sound wasn't coming from the tracks at all. It sounded closer, like it was coming from inside the cars. The first car passed completely through frame. Then the second, then the third, each window illuminated from within by a weak yellow light that flickered slightly at the edges. And that's when Daniel noticed something that made his stomach tighten. Inside the windows, there were people. At first he thought they might be mannequins, training props, something staged, but the shapes were too natural. Shoulders rising and falling slightly, heads tilted at subtle angles, hands resting on laps. Every seat appeared occupied. Every passenger sat completely still. No phones glowing in their hands. No conversations, no subtle shifts in posture, no blinking that he could see, just pale faces, all staring forward, not looking at each other, not looking out the windows, just staring straight ahead, as if their attention was fixed on something beyond the front of the train. Daniel zoomed in on one of the windows. The resolution blurred the details, but he could make out a woman seated near the aisle. Her hair hung loosely over one shoulder. Her skin looked almost gray, under the failing light. Her lips were slightly parted. Her eyes were open, wide, but there was something empty about them. Not unfocused, not distracted, empty, like glass. The scraping sound grew louder in his headset. He noticed now that it rose and fell in uneven waves, almost like breathing, a slow inhale, a dragging exhale. The train did not slow down. It moved at a steady, unnatural glide. Not fast, not slow, just consistent. Too smooth for something so old-looking. Daniel's fingers hovered over the emergency line to track operations. He hesitated. What would he even say? There's a train that doesn't exist. He glanced at the schedule again, still blank. He checked the live rail current display. No spike in power usage. No indication of active third rail draw in that sector. That meant, according to the system, there was no train drawing electricity, and yet it continued passing through the tunnel. Car after car, window after window, faces after faces. Then something changed. In the fourth car, a man near the window twitched. It was subtle, a small jerk in the neck. Daniel leaned forward. The man's head slowly began to turn. Not toward another passenger, Not toward the front of the train, toward the camera. The movement was stiff, mechanical, as if each muscle fired half a second too late. The man's face rotated fully until he was looking directly out the window, directly into the lens. Daniel felt his breathing shorten. The man's eyes were darker than they should have been. The pupils seemed too wide, swallowing most of the visible white. Then, without warning, the woman beside him began to turn to her movement was smoother, almost synchronized. Then the passenger behind them, and the one across the aisle. One by one, like a slow ripple passing through water, the passengers in that car began rotating their heads toward the window, toward the CCTV camera, until every visible face in that frame was staring outward, not blinking, not reacting, just staring. Daniel felt a cold pressure settle at the base of his skull. He switched to another camera angle further down the same tunnel, to see if he could catch the train from the front. The screen flashed, static. He tried another, static again. The system map showed all cameras in the adjacent sector still active, but the feeds wouldn't load. He returned to the original camera. The train continued gliding forward. The scraping sound intensified. Underneath it now, Daniel could hear something else, a faint murmur. He increased the volume. The murmur sharpened. It wasn't random noise. It sounded layered. Multiple voices speaking at once, but too low to understand. A soft chorus blending into a single tone, as if the passengers were whispering in perfect unison. The next car passed. Every face inside it was already turned toward the window, as if they had been waiting for their moment to be seen. Daniel's reflection appeared faintly. On the monitor glass, he noticed something strange. In the window of the last car coming into frame, one seat near the door was empty, completely empty. The light above it flickered erratically. The rest of the passengers in that car were already facing the camera, except one. At the far end of the car, near the connecting door to the previous carriage, a tall figure stood instead of sitting. Its head was slightly tilted downward. Its arms hung stiffly at its sides. It did not turn toward the window. It did not move at all. Daniel felt a wave of nausea roll through him. The dragging sound reached its loudest point as the final car approached. Then, suddenly, the scraping stopped. Not faded. Stopped. The silence that followed felt heavy, thick. The train entered the next section of tunnel. The camera tracked it for only a second more. Then the image flickered, and every camera in that section went black. Not just the one he was watching, all of them. The entire sector disappeared. From his monitor wall at once, Daniel stared at the blank screens. The clock in the corner of his display still read 3:17 a.m. No alarms triggered, no emergency lights, just darkness on the feeds. He tapped the keyboard, trying to refresh the system. Nothing responded. The control room suddenly felt much smaller, much quieter. Then, through his headset, the static returned, soft at first, then sharper, and beneath it, a low, synchronized whisper, too faint to understand, but unmistakably close, as if it wasn't coming from the tunnel anymore, as if it was coming from somewhere inside the room with him. The blackout lasted exactly 47 seconds. Daniel knew that because he counted. Not calmly, not rationally. He counted because there was nothing else he could do. The monitors had gone completely dark. When systems fail in a place like this, alarms usually follow. Red warnings, flashing alerts, automated voice prompts, but there was nothing. Just black screens and the faint hum of electricity inside the control room beneath New York City. He counted under his breath. 31, 32, 33. At 47, the screens flickered. At 48, they came back, all at once. Every tunnel feed restored simultaneously, as if someone had flipped a hidden switch. Daniel's eyes went straight to the camera that had shown the train. The tunnel was empty. No train, no debris, no sparks, no lingering dust in the air. The rails looked undisturbed. The walls looked unchanged. The dim maintenance lights glowed steadily. If someone had shown him the footage at that exact moment, he would have believed nothing had happened. Daniel leaned forward, his palms flat on the desk. He rewound the last 2 minutes of recording. The file jumped from 3 hours 16 minutes and 59 seconds AM to 3 hours 18 minutes and 0 seconds AM. The entire 47-second gap was missing. Not corrupted, not distorted, missing. He immediately picked up the internal phone and reported what he had seen. His voice sounded different to his own ears. Tighter, less certain. Within 15 minutes, 2 supervisors arrived. Both looked annoyed, more than concerned. Night shift disruptions were common. System hiccups happened more often than realized. Daniel explained everything carefully. The unscheduled train, the passengers, the blackout. They listened. Then they began checking the data. Rail sensors first. The tracks were equipped with weight detection systems. Any object heavy enough to register as a train would automatically log into the system. Time, duration, axle count. The supervisor refreshed the sensor dashboard. Nothing. No weight had been recorded on that track between 1 AM and 4 AM according to the system. Nothing had moved through that section of tunnel. They checked power draw next. Trains required significant electricity from the third rail. Even an older model would create a measurable spike. There was no spike, no fluctuation, no anomaly. According to every measurable metric, the tunnel had remained empty all night. One supervisor gave Daniel a long look. It was probably a glitch, he said calmly. Old wiring, camera malfunction, maybe a reflection from another line. Daniel shook his head. It wasn't a reflection. The man didn't argue. He just sighed softly. Save the footage. We'll have it take a look in the morning. Daniel nodded. He had already saved it. Or at least, he thought he had. He clearly remembered clicking the archive button. He remembered watching the file process. He even remembered double-checking the timestamp. 3:17 AM, when IT arrived, several hours later. Daniel sat beside them as they opened the archive system. The timestamp existed. The folder existed. But the video file itself was gone. Not corrupted. Not partially erased. Gone. Deleted. The IT technician frowned and checked the access log. Every file interaction required credentials. Every deletion required authorization. Every change left a digital footprint. But the access log showed nothing unusual. No record of who accessed the file. No record of when. No deletion entry. It was as if the file had never been created at all. Daniel felt a tightness in his chest. I saved it, he insisted quietly. Sometimes the system shows a save confirmation, even if it doesn't complete. Daniel knew that wasn't true. The supervisors eventually left, advising him to get some rest and not to overthink it. The incident was classified as a glitch, but Daniel couldn't let it go. After his shift ended, instead of going home, he stayed. He logged back into the archive system and began digging through older footage records. If this had been a glitch, it would be unique, but something in his stomach told him it wasn't. He searched for keywords: unscheduled movement, signal anomaly, phantom signal, tunnel disturbance. Most results were mundane. Then he filtered by time, late night hours. Between 3 o'clock and 4 AM, he found a maintenance report dated October 1998. It was short, only 3 paragraphs. Filed by a track operator. Unscheduled train sighting reported by operator. No confirmation. Possible visual error. No sensor data recorded. Daniel read it 3 times. The wording felt careful. Too careful. He searched deeper. Another record surfaced from 1981. This one wasn't a formal incident report. It was an internal memo. Phantom train rumor among night staff. No official acknowledgement. Advised personnel to avoid speculation. Daniel felt the air in the control room grow heavier. He continued searching. He found small fragments scattered across decades. A 2004 complaint from a platform cleaner who claimed he heard an arriving train that never appeared on the schedule. A 1973 handwritten note scanned into the digital archive, mentioning headlights in dead tunnel. Each record ended the same way. No confirmation, no evidence. Case closed quietly. Daniel leaned back in his chair. He wasn't the first to see it. He was just the first to record it. Or at least, he was supposed to be. The pattern disturbed him more than the train itself. Every sighting occurred between 3:15 and 3:20 a.m. Every sighting involved a line shut down for the night. Every sighting ended with missing data. He felt a sudden chill as he opened the system map and overlaid the historical reports. The sightings weren't random. They followed a loose path through different sectors, not a route that appeared on public maps, but a route that connected older, unused sections of tunnel beneath Manhattan. Daniel zoomed in further. Some of those tunnels had been sealed decades ago. Abandoned platforms, discontinued lines, forgotten stations that no longer appeared on updated maps. Yet the reports aligned along them like faint breadcrumbs. He glanced at the clock. 2:58 a.m., almost 3 again. His shift for that night was about to begin. He felt a quiet dread settle into his thoughts. If the pattern continued, if the timing held, then at 3:17 a.m., something might happen again. He stared at the main monitor wall. Every feed displayed normal activity. Empty platforms, flickering fluorescent lights, rats darting along the edges of tracks. Everything looked ordinary, too ordinary. Daniel pulled up the same tunnel camera from the night before and enlarged it. The image was stable, silent. Still, he checked the recording buffer to ensure it was functioning. It was. He made a second backup route for the feed, sending it to a separate server node. If something appeared again, he wanted redundancy. He didn't trust the system anymore. The seconds ticked closer to 3:17. The room felt colder than usual. Daniel folded his hands together to stop them from shaking. He told himself this was paranoia, confirmation bias, his brain trying to turn coincidence into pattern. 3:16 a.m. The tunnel remained empty. 3:16 and 30 seconds. Nothing. 3:16 and 55. The fluorescent light above him flickered once. Daniel's eyes did not leave the screen. 3:17 a.m. for a moment. Nothing changed. Then, very softly, the image trembled. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for Daniel. And as the faint vibration began to ripple across the tunnel camera once more, Daniel understood something with quiet, sinking certainty. The reports from 1981, the note from 1998, the whispers among night staff, they weren't glitches, they weren't rumors, they were warnings, and this time, he was ready to watch. 3 nights later, at exactly 3:17 a.m., the lights flickered again. Just a brief dimming in the control room. The fluorescent bulbs hummed, dipped, and steadied. He didn't reach for the phone this time. He already knew what it would say, so he just watched. The tunnel camera began to tremble, a faint vibration crawling across the screen like a pulse. The rails gave off a faint shimmer under maintenance lights. The darkness at the far end seemed thicker than it should have been, like something occupying space. Daniel leaned closer. Then the headlights appeared. They grew slowly, like distant stars. 2 dull circles forming in the tunnel. The scraping sound returned. He had turned the audio up. It began low and metallic, a faint tremor that almost resembled breathing. The train emerged from the darkness, old, charred, metal warped in unnatural ways. No route sign, no destination. Just blank windows glowing with sickly yellow light. But this time, it slowed down, deliberate, not a normal deceleration, but something more intentional. Daniel felt his heartbeat sink with the scrape of metal in his ears. The headlights dimmed as the train approached the camera, not fading completely, but lowering, as if adjusting, as if it didn't want to be too bright. The scraping sound grew louder, vibrating through his headset and into his jaw. He could almost feel it in his teeth. The train crawled forward until the front car aligned perfectly with the camera lens. And then it stopped. Completely. Just silence. A long, heavy silence. Daniel's throat tightened. The second car's doors were clearly visible. He told himself they would stay closed. Then one of the doors slid open. The sound was hollow. metal grinding softly against metal. No announcement followed, just the empty echo. The interior lights flickered once. Inside, the passengers still sat perfectly still, every one of them facing forward, eyes open. Daniel swallowed and leaned even closer. Seconds passed. Nothing moved. He almost convinced himself the door opening was random. Then someone shifted. A woman seated near the center of the second car moved her head. Not quickly, not sharply, slowly. She did not turn toward the open door. She did not look toward the aisle. She turned toward the window, toward the camera. Her face was pale gray, as if drained of color entirely. Her lips were slightly parted. Her eyes looked wrong, too dark, too empty. The scraping sound beneath the train stopped. Absolute silence filled his headset. And then, one by one, the other passengers began turning their heads too. Each movement began at slightly different times, but finished together, all at the same time. Every face angled toward the window, every pair of eyes fixed directly into the CCTV lens, as if they knew someone was watching. Daniel's breath grew shallow. The air in the control room felt thin. The monitors around the main feed flickered faintly. Inside the train, not a single passenger blinked. Not a twitch, not a swallow, just staring. The open doorway remained dark behind them, a black rectangle leading into the car. Daniel noticed something else now. The seats near the door were empty. Not just one, 3 of them. And he did not remember seeing empty seats before. The woman closest to the door tilted her head slightly to one side. The motion was small, curious. The other passengers mirrored it. Not perfectly, but almost. Like reflections in uneven glass. The screen began to fill with static at the edges. White noise creeping inward from the corners. The image distorted slightly, lines bending across the faces inside the car. Daniel gripped the edge of his desk. "Don't," he whispered under his breath. The static thickened. The audio feed crackled sharply. Through the interference, he heard something, a whisper. Layered voices speaking at once. Not loud, but coordinated. The woman closest to the door slowly stood up. Her movement was too smooth, almost gliding from seated to standing without visible effort. Her eyes never left the camera. She stepped toward the open doorway. Behind her, the other passengers remained frozen, watching, waiting. The static intensified, streaking across the image in thick horizontal bands. The camera struggled to hold the picture. Daniel's heartbeat pounded in his ears. The woman reached the threshold of the open door. She paused, and for the first time, her gaze shifted slightly, not away from the camera, past it, as if she were looking through the lens, through the wall, through the layers of concrete and steel, separating her from the control room. The whispering in the audio feed became clearer, not words, just syllables overlapping. Then the woman stepped off the train. Daniel saw it clearly. Her foot crossed the gap. There was no platform there, no station, just bare track and gravel. Yet she landed upright, balanced. Behind her, something moved in the darkness, a shape taller than the doorway, broader. It leaned forward slightly, as if following her. The screen flared white with static. For a split second, before it cut out completely, Daniel saw the woman standing directly beneath the tunnel camera. Her face tilted upward, her mouth opened slightly wider, and her eyes, they were no longer dark, they were reflecting light. Not from the tunnel, from somewhere above, from somewhere inside the control room. The feed went black. The camera came back online seconds later. There was no warning, no gradual return of signal. One moment the screen was consumed by static, and the next, the image snapped back into place with perfect clarity. The train was gone. No fading headlights in the distance, no final car disappearing into darkness, just empty tunnel. The rails lay still beneath the maintenance lights. The concrete walls were unchanged. Dust settled softly along the edges of the tracks, as if nothing had disturbed it. The tunnel was empty, except for one thing. a figure standing directly beneath the camera. Daniel didn't breathe at first. He thought it might be distortion, a trick of shadow, but it remained, centered in frame, perfectly aligned under the lens, not moving, not looking around, just standing there. Its body looked human, average height, slim build, arms hanging at its sides, but something about its posture was wrong. Too stiff, too straight. Its spine looked unnaturally vertical, as if locked into place. The shoulders didn't sag. The head didn't shift with subtle muscle adjustments the way a living person's would. It stood like a mannequin positioned carefully for display, as if it had just learned how to stand and hadn't quite mastered the details. Daniel's breathing grew shallow. He could hear it echo faintly inside his headset. He swallowed and leaned toward the microphone, mounted near his monitor. "You're not supposed to be here," he whispered into the empty control room. His voice sounded smaller than he expected. On the screen, the figure did not react at first. Then, slowly, it tilted its head upward. The motion was precise, measured, a smooth rotation at the neck without any visible tension in the shoulders. It looked directly into the lens, looking directly at him. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. The distance between the tunnel and the control room suddenly felt thin, insufficient. The figure's eyes were dark at first, empty like the passengers had been. Then something shifted within them, a faint reflection, not of the tunnel lights, of something rectangular, bright, like a room full of screens. Daniel instinctively glanced at the monitor wall around him. The reflection in its eyes matched the shape of his control room. The screen went black again, not just the tunnel feed. All monitors in the control room shut down at once. Every platform, every hallway, every stairwell, total silence. The hum of fluorescent lights vanished. The soft whir of ventilation stopped. Daniel was left sitting in absolute darkness. He could hear his own heartbeat now, heavy, irregular. He didn't move. He didn't dare turn around. Seconds stretched longer than they should have. He counted again without meaning to. 1, 2, 3. By the time he reached 30, the darkness felt alive, pressing against him from all sides. Then, exactly 30 seconds later, the lights flickered back. The hum returned. The monitors blinked on one by one. The tunnel camera restored itself first. Daniel's eyes snapped to it immediately. The tunnel was empty. No figure, no train, no footprints on the gravel between the tracks. Nothing. The rail sensors displayed no weight, no alarms triggered. The system logs showed no interruption beyond a temporary signal fluctuation. It was as if the previous 2 minutes had never existed. Daniel exhaled slowly. His hands were shaking now. He told himself it was over, that whatever had happened was contained inside the system, contained inside the screens. Then he heard it, a sound behind him, soft, subtle. He turned his head slowly, toward the security door at the back of the control room. There was a knock, soft, slow, 3 times. Each knock spaced evenly apart, not loud, not aggressive, just deliberate. Daniel froze. No one should have been in the hallway at this hour, without badge access. The door required a keycard and PIN. The system logged every entry. He glanced at the access monitor beside him. No entry recorded, no badge scan, no door alarm, just silence in the hallway outside. The knock did not repeat. Instead, a faint shadow appeared at the bottom of the door, where the small gap met the floor, as if someone were standing directly on the other side. Daniel forced himself to speak. "Security access required," he called out, his voice trembling slightly. There was no immediate response. Then, through the door, he heard a voice, calm, gentle, close. "This train wasn't scheduled for you." The tone was almost polite, not threatening, not angry, just stating a fact. Daniel's chest tightened so sharply, he had to grip the edge of his desk. He stared at the door, expecting the handle to move. It didn't. Instead, the monitors in front of him flickered again, but only briefly. The tunnel feed returned to normal brightness, and in the reflection on his screen, Daniel saw something that made his breath stop entirely. The figure was no longer in the tunnel. It was standing behind him, close enough that its head hovered just over his shoulder. Its posture still perfectly straight, its face angled toward the monitors. Watching the same empty tunnel he was watching, Daniel didn't turn around. He couldn't. The reflection remained for 3 seconds. Then it was gone. The hallway outside the door fell silent. No footsteps. No movement. Nothing. The remainder of Daniel's shift passed without further incident. No more flickering lights. No more blackouts. The system logs showed nothing unusual, beyond minor signal interference. When morning staff arrived, Daniel filed a formal report. It was reviewed, escalated briefly, then classified. The CCTV footage from that night was marked as corrupted, never officially released. Daniel resigned 2 days later. He did not give a detailed explanation. He simply stated that he no longer felt comfortable working overnight shifts. He never told anyone about the voice, or the reflection. Every year since then, on the same date, at exactly 3:17 a.m., several cameras inside the subway system managed by the Metropolitan Transportation Authority lose signal for exactly 47 seconds. The interruption affects different tunnel sectors each time. The official explanation remains the same. Routine maintenance, interference, signal fluctuation, no cause for concern. But a few night shift workers have quietly mentioned something else. During those 47 seconds, some claim they hear a distant arrival chime in their headsets, a low metallic scraping beneath it, and occasionally, 3 soft knocks echoing somewhere down an empty corridor. No explanation has ever been given. And if you ever find yourself alone on a late-night platform in New York City, if the air suddenly feels heavier, if the lights flicker once without reason, and you hear a train approaching when the arrival board says nothing is due, make sure you check the schedule. Make sure there's a number above the headlights. Make sure there's a destination on the sign, because if the windows are blank, and the passengers inside are already staring at you before the train even stops, it may not be a train meant to pick you up. It may be a train that is only stopping to see who's watching.